The latter combination almost always ends up being primarily a discussion. Eleanor and Gerard would say that the two don't mix well. Quote, like oil and water, they foster different dynamics and lead to very different end results, unquote. Eleanor and Gerard explore a list of qualities which define dialogue. Briefly paraphrased, they are advocacy. When advocacy, the intention of it, is to offer a perspective for the group's learning. Inquiry and reflection. When the intention is to hold an attitude of curiosity, opening doors for new insights. And reflection is holding the door open long enough for perceptions to emerge. Another characteristic is suspension of judgment. When the intention is to observe judgments of self and others from a neutral position, remaining detached and not reactive. Release of the need for specific outcomes. When the intention is to engage in a divergent conversation, expanding our thinking and searching of new possibilities. Another characteristic, authenticity. When the intention is to be honest, truthful, trustworthy with your own assumptions and beliefs and feelings. Your truth is your truth, nothing more, nothing less. A slower pace with silence between speakers is another characteristic. When the intention is to allow more subtle levels of meaning and relationship to come forward. Silence is often the key to new insights and breakthrough ideas. Another, listening deeply to self and to others for collective meaning. When the intention is to listen from a position of neutrality and detachment, with a willingness to consider all perspectives, listening for interrelationships you see to the whole. It is the combination of these previous elements working together that ultimately distinguishes true dialogue from discussion. So what does having dialogue have to do with creating a futuristic vision for the organization? First, I believe, organizations who are willing to enter into dialogue develop the capability to honestly discover, share, and live their reason for being and their most fundamental core beliefs. Dialogue provides the organization the clarity of why they exist, the clarity of who they are, the clarity of what they stand for, and the clarity to decipher the unimportant from the important. And that alone can be significant. For as Jiddu Krishnamurti wrote in The Last Freedom, quote, if you begin to understand what you are without trying to change it, then what you are undergoes a transformation, unquote. Second, organizations who exercise dialogue facilitate quicker movement up and quicker learning on their mastery path. They have the ability to recognize, hear, understand, and translate new intuitions and insight into real-life situations. The organization and members in it achieve what Chris Argyris of Harvard University calls double-loop learning. Quote, learning that gets to the causal level of things, the thinking behind the strategies, decisions, and actions that produce results. Juanita Brown and David Isaac tell us in their article, Conversation as a Core Business Process, that, quote, the Institute for Research on Learning has found that knowledge creation is primarily a social rather than an individual process. People learn together in conversation as they work and practice together, unquote. Third, organizations who exercise dialogue abound in ideas and innovation. Quote, if we think together, unquote, writes David Bohm in Changing Consciousness, continuing with the quote, then maybe we can solve our common problems, unquote. These organizations view the world from its interconnectedness. Organization members listen, challenge assumptions, view the world as if through new eyes. They see relationships with others many may miss. They recognize the value and role of intuition. They are the source of vision. Returning to Drucker's admonition, how are you managing your employees, your knowledge workers? Are you creating the environment for ideas and innovation? Are your employees participating in defining your organization's future? Fourth, organizations who exercise dialogue converse with their customers in the same way they converse with each other. They understand that value creation is rooted in the authenticity of relationship with their customers and their communities. Members can engage in inquiry, move behind assumptions to learn and understand shared meaning, collaborate in an authentic way, and listen deeply through the mind of the customer or community. Like the employees in dialogue, the customers and the communities are a source of long-term vision. Again, returning to Drucker's admonition, are you as leaders and managers focused outside the organization toward the customers, toward the local and global communities you serve? Are you including them as participants in, or their insights as being important to the creation of vision? Briefly then, mastery and dialogue are essential for vision. Mastery creates the incubator for vision, and dialogue the transition or the birth of vision. How can you explore this? Is there some experiment that you might try? Is there something you could do to experience dialogue related to creating your organization's future? Yes. Here's an exercise you could easily conduct, which incorporates many of the elements of dialogue and vision. It is a visioning exercise used by Cube Learning International, based on Peter Senge's work. The exercise can be conducted with any group of about 10 to 12 people. To frame the exercise, the purpose of the exercise is to gain insight into the group's view of the future, their vision. The intention is to have a dialogue, a divergent conversation, to discover the multiple best perspectives, opinions, and answers. The objectives of the experiment are to have members of the group express their thoughts and visions, to capture the key ideas, to summarize the key themes, and to create a document for further dialogue. The strategy used in the experiment will be to have the participants picture themselves in the future, and then describe their observations using the 5 senses. The structure will be the entire group standing in a circle, and the exercise lasts between 20 and 40 minutes. There are 3 roles with different responsibilities in the group. A leader, facilitator, who is responsible for asking a series of questions. A scribe, to capture the key thoughts and phrases expressed by the group. And the contributors, all the remaining members of the group. And there are a few ground rules. And they are that no one speaks during the designated periods of silence. Only one person speaks at a time. That their eyes should be remain closed during the session. That no one should walk around, including the scribe, so as not to distract the participants. That judgment be suspended on the value of any offered observations, that there is no right answer, that participants should be authentic and share any observation or insights they may have, regardless of whether they currently seem linked to what others have said. And finally, the last ground rule is that one may build on the observations of others. For the sake of this example, let's assume we want to gain insight into what your work group's vision is for the future. The exercise begins with everyone except the scribe standing in a circle. The facilitator or leader begins the exercise by informing the group to place or picture themselves in the future, 3 to 5 years from the present. The time frame can vary depending on your situation. After the instruction, the group will stand in silence for about 3 minutes thinking about it. Then the leader will ask the group a series of questions, which include questions related to each of the 5 senses and emotions. One way the leader can conduct the exercise is through asking questions. For example, it is now 3 years from now. Picture yourself outside the office building as you arrive in the morning. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you hear people talking about? What are they saying? Who's speaking? What is the mood of their conversation? What do you sense them feeling? What else? What do you smell? What else? You can walk up to touch something. What is it? What sensations do you have? What else? What taste might you be experiencing? What feelings do you have as you stand in front of the front door? What else? What are you thinking as you stand there? What else? What else? Then the leader may suggest that they enter the lobby and proceed to repeat a series of similar questions, once again including all 5 senses. Then he may lead the group down the halls, into a meeting with employees, into a meeting with customers, into the cafeteria or coffee break room, etc., etc. The leader tends to pace the inquiry based on the responses. However, the leader will also permit the group to stand in silence occasionally before moving forward as well. When finished with the tour, the leader will again have the group remain silent for a couple of minutes before opening their eyes. Meanwhile, the scribe has been capturing the images and thoughts of the group on flip charts. When finished, the group then creates a synthesis of all the images and thoughts and looks for themes. At this point, it might be advantageous to take a break and allow people a chance to reflect on the synthesis for a period of time, a few hours or until the next meeting. When the group reconvenes, they work to re-clarify their vision. Conducting a series of these experiments allows leaders and managers to capture insights from different parts of their organization and from customers. Needless to say, they become the beginning of a series of further dialogues and discussions. While this example is limited when it comes to the spectrum of different experiences one can engage in around dialogue, it is founded on and demonstrates the dialogic principles. And in the bibliography of your participants manual, you will find many other examples to help you engage in dialogue, to achieve new levels of mastery, and unleash the hidden visions within your organization. In summary, I would like to quote again from Eleanor and Gerard, quote, "Crafting effective visions is a natural application for dialogue. Visions that are built on shared meaning. They grow out of ongoing conversations about what people consider important, what they want to be, the work they consider worth doing, and how they see themselves accomplishing it. Living, breathing visions involve all the people who will be responsible for making them come true. Those who have not had the opportunity to discover their place within the vision of the organization are unlikely to contribute their full talents and energies. If they are not clear to each of us, we don't know which direction to go, which choices to make. Visions built on clarity of shared understanding are powerful. They are at the core of all aligned action." Unquote. I began our discussion today by suggesting that we ought to more fully capitalize on the human potential in our organizations to create our future, our vision. As I define the human potential in organizations, I include customers and communities. It is there where you will discover your vision. Let me conclude in the words of Schopenhauer, quote, "Thus, the task is not so much to see what no one has yet seen, but to think what nobody has thought about which everyone sees." Unquote. I invite you all in education, for business, or government to permanently engage in creative thinking and visioning. You will soon be far ahead of everyone else.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffmann. Let us begin the first question and answer session. We will try to answer as many questions as possible. Therefore, we ask that only one question be asked per phone call, and that those questions be as brief as possible. You may call the studio directly at the phone numbers or fax which now appear on your screen. We remind you to make your phone calls at a distance from the monitor to avoid feedback. Our first call is from Mexico. It's from the state of Hidalgo, La Universidad La Salle, in Pachuca, Hidalgo, Mexico.
Buenos días.
Good morning.
Nuestra pregunta es la siguiente.
Our question is the following. How much are public institutions implementing the general principles of administration and business administration in the developing countries?
Mr. Hoffmann, public institutions?
Actually, many of the public institutions are implementing many of the business principles. I believe that as we look at the principles of business, clearly can apply there, number one, but I think they're also looking for efficiency, effectiveness, and being able to manage difficult situations. And so they're applying the principles of business and also the principles of dialogue, the principles of gathering information, having reflections on what the meaning is, and being able to define for themselves the direction that they're going. So we see it more and more in public institutions.
Okay, our next call is from Paraguay. It is La Universidad Americana in Asunción, Paraguay.
Saludos desde Asunción, Paraguay.
Greetings from Asunción. When we are visioning the challenges, we also have to change things in the organizations, which are usually meeting certain resistances within the organization. What do you suggest for us to fight that resistance?
Right. Well, I guess the first thing I would say is I probably wouldn't fight the resistance. I would probably listen, because within the comments there is something important that the individuals are trying to say. And I think also as we look at managing resistance in the organization, we have to create an invitation, create something inviting for those people to find benefit for themselves in whatever the new situation is that you're trying to create. And so I would say spend some time having conversations with them, but listening to their need, and then being able to take that need and respond to it in a way which will allow them to feel like they belong and that, in fact, they will benefit from the change.
Thank you. Our next call is from Cuba, from Havana, from Sania Internet in Havana, Cuba.
Good morning to all of you, and greetings from Cuba. Our question is very simple and very brief. We would like to tell you if it's what is first, what comes first, the creation or formulation of a vision, of an organizational vision, or an organizational vision, a vision for the organization or an organization for the vision. I guess that's what you wanted to say.
Okay. That's a very interesting and challenging question, actually. Most organizations are developed from someone who has a vision, and the organization is built around it, and the mechanisms are put in place to deliver to that vision. However, if you would say that the vision is created for the organization, I think we have to put it in the context of the market, put it in the context of what the organization is attempting to do. And so I would suggest that if you're recreating the vision for an organization that currently exists, that you need to put it in the context of today's business, put it in the context of what you offer, put it in the context of your value proposition to the marketplace. And from that, you'll probably be able to engage the resource of the business and create a vision that the organization can support within the limits of that organization. So hopefully that hits it from the 2 points of view that you asked.
Thank you. Our next call, I believe, is in English. It's from Brazil, from Rio Grande do Sul, the state of Rio Grande do Sul, in the city of Porto Alegre, from the Serviço Nacional de Aprendizagem Comercial.
Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's easy to think in the future in countries where the economic situation is stable, like United States. But in Brazil, for example, we don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow. What's your opinion about thinking in future in developing countries? Thank you very much.
I would say that any country, any organization, any group of people actually needs a vision, because without a vision, you probably will not get anywhere. And even in difficult economic times, it may even be important to have a destination or a vision that you're shooting for, so that you can more acutely assign the resource, use the capital that you may have available in very, maybe a limited way, and reduce your risk. And so I would suggest, again, that any organization that is attempting to deliver something to the marketplace really ought to have a vision and stick with it in economic difficulties as well as in times of opulence, I should say. Okay.
Dr. Frantz, do you agree with that?
I do, and I think the question that the way that you're asking the question implies that what you're committed to is to stability, and so I think just put some markers for stability, and be a little more cautious, so that if the economy changes one way or the next, you'll be able to respond accordingly.
Thank you. Our next call is from Mexico. It's from Mexico City, from el Instituto Politécnico Nacional de Educación Continua.
This is Professor Uriarte from Continuous Education from the National Polytechnical Institute. Is it recommendable to have in the classrooms students close their eyes and visualize what the teacher is sending them as stimuli and taking the verbal cues? Would you please comment on this?
Well, I'll comment, and I'll let Dr. Frantz comment as well. I would say that you need to be cautious when you're asking a group of people to close their eyes in terms of creating the context or the space. So I would say just don't ask people to close their eyes and then challenge them with questions. But I would set it up and frame it in a way that creates a security for the individuals who are in the room, knowing that nothing is going to happen to them physically, and that what you're really attempting to get them to do is to reflect in a different way. And so I would say that creating the space of security is important before you do that, but I don't see anything from my point of view that would cause some difficulty with it.
Dr. Frantz, do you agree?
Yes, and I would add that the value of closing your eyes is that you simply reduce all the stimuli around you, and so it allows you to center yourself on some inner values that you have without being distracted by the environment. But with practice, you can actually learn to do that with your eyes open. So I don't think that there's any value per se in having to close your eyes. It's a matter of where you're placing your attention.
Thank you. Our next question is also from Mexico, from the state of Mexico. It's La Universidad Tecnológica de Nezahualcóyotl in Nezahualcóyotl, state of Mexico.
Muy buenos días.
Muy buenos días. Good morning. What is the training that you recommend for to reach command of our performance and to attain mastery of performance?
As I think about the mastery path and moving up the mastery path and developing competencies, I think first of all we have to articulate for ourselves what it is that we would like to accomplish. I think we need to ask questions of people around us who have had experiences in that area or could be considered experts that will give us information. I believe also that there's a context in which we are attempting to achieve mastery and move forward, and we ought to understand and ask questions about that. And I think as we move forward, we may or may not be conscious of some of the mastery that we've achieved. So we consistently need feedback. We need to put ourselves in a position where we have someone that's available to us to provide observations, to provide feedback, to give us more information, to let us know what we've actually done,